Ah, okay, I think we might be getting somewhere finally. Although, in OBS it's saying no data. Super weird. Okay, interesting. Yo, 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 hello, hello, hello. Why is it saying no data though? Fresh page, is that going to make any difference? Possibly, possibly not. Okay. Man, I practiced this and everything, and we're still having some issues. That is really unfortunate. Well, let's see. Docs. YouTube live control panel, yep. Stats, nope, don't need that. Yeah, well, it's one thing when you're actually doing it, and then it's another when you're on the fly. Okay, well, it seems like it's working. OBS is being a bit of a pain. Let me just quickly check. Is that going to switch over? Because I'm like sort of weirdly watching this. Yeah, okay, alright. Okay, things are basically working. It's all just a little bit disconcerting on my end, because also I can't open up the chat window in... Yeah. Very strange. Well, anyway, we'll manage. Right. Hi, everyone. Hello. And welcome to this Rodion Raskolnikov work in progress live stream. I'm going to just have to keep, like, switching windows to see what people are actually saying in the chat. That's fine. And there's going to be a bit of a delay. But that's kind of par for the course. Okay. And I think everyone can hear me alright, so at least that's slightly better than things were last time. Yeah, first things first, let us get a poll going, because we have to, over the course of this video, work out which character I'm going to do a deep dive into next. So, which character, which sinner next? And it's not going to be a yes or no question, it's going to be Sinclair. It's one Ishmael. We'll call her. And last but not least, Yisang. Begin! Sweet. Okay, that's just going to kind of sit up the whole time, and we'll see how we're going with that. Yeah, hope everyone's been doing well. Pretty excited to see the 3rd anniversary event coming up. What are people planning to get with their goodies? Any suggestions too? Because I think there's one of these tickets where you can get like a sinner of any particular level from like one of the first bunch of seasons up to season 6 even maybe. Speaking of which, I've still got this Season 1 identity ticket, and if anyone wants to tell me, I will absolutely follow your instructions, because you guys will know much more about the game than I do. Should I get... It seems to be that Grip Faust or Grip Sinclair, which, considering I don't have either of those identities, are good choices. I've got a ducker. A ducker? Yeah, on. So you don't hear my horrible slurping noises as I have my coffee, because it's also blowing a gale here at the moment. And so otherwise there'd be kind of this weird background wind noise. Yeah, so I've tried it. It might make things sound a little bit uncanny, as it just sort of suddenly goes to dead silence when the decibels drop below a certain level. But anyway, we're figuring things out as we go, and thanks for bearing with. Pause to check the chat once more. Best thing to get from that one is probably Mal Faust. Okay. That's regardless. No, that's good to know for this upcoming one, though. That's really awesome. Thank you, Bonnie2920. Oh, and Binagarion. Probably mispronouncing that name. That's cool. I recognize you from some of your recent comments. It's great. Oh, thank you. I will absolutely make use of that. Cheers. The friend code, I mean. What's everyone reading? I don't know. I feel like this is just some kind of a little preamble thing. So I should lay out, I think I did do a little trailer for the beginning of this live stream. Basically, because for the Gregor full-on video, I realized I was maybe getting a little bit into, like, okay, what comparisons can we find? It was getting a little bit trivia heavy, and what I want to try and do, at least, is to go in take a slightly broader focus. I'm finding that the rule of threes is probably going to be quite useful in all sorts of ways. Obviously, we have death, rebirth, and redemption for Gregor. I think that was right. And for Rodion, looking something more like a kind of mind, body, spirit approach to the character and the novel as well. I found some really good essays, and I'll share all that stuff a little bit later in the stream. So I thought instead of putting kind of trivia into the next video, I thought I'll reserve what I've kind of found so far that I've thought is pretty interesting but won't make it into the video for this live stream. And so we'll go through a little bit of that. Oh yeah, I asked what people were reading. In addition to Crime and Punishment, I've been really enjoying this particular book. There. Really good, just sort of bog standard epic fantasy, but with a kind of an interesting twist. There's no real magic in the world until they discover, sort of 200 years or something before the advent of the novel, they discover a continent that has dragons, and of course the blood of the dragons, depending on the color, black allows you to do like telekinesis stuff, red allows you to breathe fire and control fire, and so on. When injected, gives people special powers. It's called the product, and of course this product is therefore then exploited. But the breeding programs of the dragons over the years, the dragons are getting sicker and sicker, and so we kind of come in midway through this process, and there's like kind of semi-corporate espionage. It's sort of set in an industrial, vaguely type world, but it's just very, very well written. I've read a couple of books in sort of the last 6 months, or tried to, that were advertised specifically as grimdark. I didn't even realize that was now its own kind of marketing niche, and I was unfortunately a little disappointed. They hit, they did have that kind of sword and sorcery, Fritz Lieber, Michael Moorcock, like 60s, just kind of pragmatic heroes, not really fighting against good and evil or anything like that, but they annoyed me, so I stopped reading them. But this is really good, and the guy's prolific, so I'm looking forward to reading some of his other works. Definitely. Stop to check chat. Perfect. Honestly, that's the thing that's really excited me. One, seeing people talking in the comments about how, just through Limbus Company, it's inspired them to pick up books. And honestly, it's been doing the same for me. Like chewing my way through Crime and Punishment has been really, really cool. I shouldn't say chewing, actually, because I found it a lot more enjoyable, maybe because I'm a little bit older too. But, I read some Dickens when I was younger, and I found the digressive, although bearing in mind that a lot of Dickens was written basically in installments as a kind of a magazine, so there was this kind of cliffhanger aspect. There's a little bit of filler in some of those books. I might be talking out of turn here, although I do think that Crime and Punishment, if memory serves, was serialized. But nonetheless, because you have this much more tight focus in on Raskolnikov, as long as you don't mind just that intensity of, though it is third person, sitting with this one character for a great length of time, I found it much easier to just sort of follow through with the narrative, and you just know you have to take your time with it. As you'll see later, whether or not all the viewers completely drop off at that point, when I read one of the passages that really stuck out to me a lot, which of course was the dream that he has. Right, I mean, the references are, you can just pick and choose what you want to get into, which I think is really, really great. You can almost, and sometimes I do feel like I'm enjoying playing the game and progressing through its story, but it's also just, a point of jumping off for so many other things. It's really, really excellent. And of course, beside Project Moon games, what else are people playing at the moment? I'll leave that question hanging as we kind of move our way out of the introduction and into the second part, or the middle part, or the beginning of the middle, I don't know what this is called, some of the, so in the course of looking at various notes and things, still got some of these books from school actually, they come in handy, and I kind of just make notes as I go, and of course it's interesting reading a much longer book than the novella of the Metamorphosis, but it did remind me, and just sort of thinking, oh my gosh, it's so easy to pick and choose aspects of, the symbolism or whatever, or, okay, we can see Gregor does this, there's much less material to sift through, but it put me in mind of the fact that, just because a meal doesn't have as many courses doesn't mean it's necessarily a worse meal, sorry, I've got one eye on the chat. See, Borges is someone I really do want to get into, and Calvino too. The kind of, I know magical realism is tossed around an awful lot. In fact, I think even Dostoevsky's, some of his stuff is referred to as magical realism. But yeah, Borges and Italo Calvino, I would love to take some time out to check out, and that's interesting about Kim Ji-hoon being a fan of his stuff. That's really, really cool. Yeah. So, of course, a bit of background, just in case you might not have read Crime and Punishment, or you could do with a refresher. I know I always can. So, of course, we know that the author, so we're in middle of 19th century in Russia, the author Fyodor Dostoevsky, he, of course, had experienced his own punishment for what now seems like and of course we're going to touch on some political stuff. I will touch on it all very, very lightly. This is neutral territory, right? And also I should give just a minor warning. I was very surprised actually at how intense and moving, and not upsetting, because that would be being a bit silly, but yeah, quite awful, the passage I'm going to read later was, but a very incredibly impressive, sustained piece of writing, which makes sense. It's a very impressive book. Dostoevsky had spent, he'd been sentenced to 8 years in Siberia for, if memory serves, replying to a letter in print that was criticizing, I want to say, Gogol, who was... So at this time, of course, Fyodor Dostoevsky became a lot more conservative in later life, and around the time of his writing Crime and Punishment, which you could argue is a sort of a conservative novel, although that is a very broad term to use, but it is in the sense of it is critical of utilitarianism and certain new strains of political and sociological thinking that were in the air at the time. Anyway, he had been initially sentenced to death, and there was a last-minute reprieve, and he was then sentenced to 8 years, of which he served 4, I think, of hard labour in Siberia. But this, again, of course, instilled this second chance at life, if you like. One, instilled a sense of life being very, very precious, and two, it did sort of, and also his experience being from a minor aristocratic family himself, spending this time with the lower classes, I suppose, really affected him. And of course, he sort of developed this view that the main forces in the world were, at the time he was writing Crime and Punishment, Catholicism, Protestantism, and Orthodoxy, of which Russian Orthodoxy, Russian Orthodoxy. So the book comes out in 1866, and he's under immense pressure. You could say Dostoevsky was like an artist of instability. His life tended to lurch from crisis to crisis. in his work and personal life. I mean, he was affected by epilepsy. I think he was having something like a really severe epileptic episode every 3 weeks at the time. He was also supporting relatives, and now we get into something that is very relevant to Rodion in the game, and Limbus Company, especially Canto 2, obviously. He was addicted to gambling. Pause to check chat. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know, right? It really is, yeah, that hell screen video. Because I love recording stories. I love horror stories. Still do, obviously. And I narrate. Part of my bread and butter is doing audiobooks. In fact, weirdly, it's a super weird coincidence. Sorry, I should read it out. This all started because you posted a video about Hellscreen at the time Limbus was getting the Canto 9 update. Yeah, pretty much. So at the moment, I'm actually recording a sequel to a New Zealand set audiobook, which is like a sort of mystery, in which the main character's name is Dante, which is quite funny. He's like an English assassin, and he kind of speaks like this, he sort of goes about his business. But he's also a guy. It's like one of these cute, cozy crime novels, but it's the first one was really well reviewed, and I'm really enjoying reading the second one. It's just kind of funny how life works out that way. Definitely a book that is... Crime and Punishment is definitely a book, this is Bonnie292 says, definitely a book that is informed by the specific point of Dostoevsky's life that it was written in. Absolutely. The Limbus adaptation diverges. Yes, now that is really interesting. I've been grappling with this because, of course, because when I went into this project at the beginning of the year, I thought, oh wow, this is really cool. These sinners are these actual characters that have maybe been transported from their particular settings, like a kind of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or something. That was my initial, what I assumed when I started, but of course I have been disabused of that notion. I think again it's like where I posited that Gregor was like the Kafka and Gregor who had kind of ascended a little bit, if you like, and some of his suffering he'd worked through it in his period of rebirth, and so he was a kind of fulfilled version. I wonder if in some ways, again, maybe I'm thinking too much into it, although I suppose that's kind of the whole point of these videos, is thinking too much about stuff. Rodion is like... Rodion in Limbus Company is sort of like a particular slice, because at first, again, reading it, you've got this character who is feverish, who is, abusive in a completely mad state, and planning a murder, and I was really trying to reconcile that with this sort of slightly flirtatious, teasing... but of course, as you play through the game, further aspects of this come to light. But I am inclined to agree that there is quite a big divergence. However, I still think that it's still really interesting to use the prism or the lens of the original work to kind of focus in on the game. Especially when it comes to stuff like the Eurodvia, you know what I'm talking about. District 25 and Sonia in the game, who is also quite different. Again, where was I? Oh yeah, we were supposed to be doing trivia, right? Some other interesting bits and pieces. Yeah, so St. Petersburg is as much a character in Crime and Punishment. This is true. Our favorite gambler did murder. Yeah, we can't get away from that fact, The city in Limbus Company, right, is practically a character. It's a country. It's a city-state, really. And St. Petersburg in Crime and Punishment is very much one, too. It was established by... Peter the Great, right? Yes, the modernizing emperor in 1703. So it was a pretty new... It was a pretty new city at the time. It was a flourishing cultural hub. And, of course, as Y Corp, if I remember rightly, is the most northernmost district, so is St. Petersburg to this day, or at least it's the northernmost city that has 1 million or more residents. So it's a bit of a cheat. But I still thought that was quite interesting. And, of course, while we associate, the cold with Russia and with... these sort of very dour Russian novels. Of course, Crime and Punishment is set in the summer, and it is sweltering, stinking hot. You know, you can almost smell it. All the little, the bridges and the little rivers, because it does look like an absolutely beautiful city. Another bit of interesting trivia, of course, the last name, Raskolnikov, you can break it up into a few things. Raskol, obviously, the name of the character in Crime and Punishment, because Raskol means to split, or even to crack something open, so there's the real obvious thing with the axe. And this is where I need to definitely do a little bit more digging, there's also the aspect of schism, right? Because I think something like 200 years before, I need to now refer to my notes. Yeah, about 200 years before the novel was written, there had been a huge schism in the Russian Orthodox Church. And the sort of old believers, I believe, were called Raskolniks. So we've got chopping woods and chopping heads, but we've also got the idea of to be apart, to split up. And yeah, there's a lot of Russian revolutionary material as well, which I haven't, at least in this live stream, I'm not going to particularly touch. But I think, especially in the terms of the revolutionary aspect of Sonia's syndicate and everything, the Yurodvia, I mean, the parallels are really, really clear. Although it's interesting that they're kind of waiting for the moment to happen. And there's a lot of that too, I think, when it talks about Rodion's fellow students, Razumikhin in the novel, who's a great character, by the way, and I think someone had mentioned, and apologies for forgetting, in one of the comments to my most recent post, that they really like this character, and it would be cool to see them turn up in Limbus Company, because he's really fun. He'd be, I could imagine him fitting in really well. In fact, especially with Rodion as she appears in Limbus Company, whereas Rodion in the book is kind of difficult to be around, to put it mildly. Yes. So, and I'll give just a little bit of I think I've already mentioned it, but a little bit of a spoiler, or a little bit of a looking ahead for the episode that's going to come out pretty much this time next week. So the focus is going to be mind, body, and spirit, and the way in which different characters in the novel embody these, and the way in which this also influences aspects of Limbus Company. And the rule of threes in general, I think, is a really good a rubric. It's not quite the right word, but a good way to look at all sorts of systems, whether they're mystical systems, religious systems, political systems. I don't know, it just tends to crop up in cultures and social situations and organizations throughout time and space. And so I think that's going to be a really good kind of guiding force to go forward with. So for Rodion, it's going to be mind, body, and spirit. And given that, who's winning the poll at the moment? Oh, why can't I see? Oh. Okay, well, it's just saying Sinclair for now. Can I go all the way back there? Who knows? Well, I can see Sinclair's at 58%. Learn more. Okay, no, don't open up another tab. Don't make things more complicated for yourself. Right, okay, well, if it's going to be a Sinclair, that's going to be cool. It's been ages. I read Siddhartha, because that's a Hermann Hesse novel, isn't it? Quite some time ago, so it's going to be cool to get back in there and Steppenwolf and all that stuff. It's so weird to think that, somehow the song Born to be Wild is, vaguely associated. And then even the word heavy metal comes out of that. Right. Okay, we're coming sort of to the middle of the stream now, and awesome. Hey, thanks for sticking around, everyone. Because I haven't sort of had as much of a chance to do this with my usual videos, there haven't been a lot of horror videos coming out of Tom's Terror Trove, kind of giving a bit of a lie to the name. Sorry about that. Nonetheless, I'm going to try to get I am going to try to take some time to sort of do a bit more reading of things. Chuck. But for now, I want to read this incredible passage from fairly early on in the novel. Let's make sure I'm sticking to my schedule here. What basically happens is Rodion has a dream, and it both reflects things that are happening at the moment of the novel and also is almost weirdly prophetic too. So let's go for that now, shall we? Oh, and then I'm going to explain what casuistry is, because that was really fascinating to learn about that. Righty. Cool, a few more people are joining us. I hope this isn't the worst then time for you to do so, because we're going to have about a 15 to 20 minute reading from a book. Please don't run away, because after that, I'm going to talk about a little bit more trivia from the upcoming deep dive into Rodion. Please stick around to vote on the thing. Also, to tell me, as I asked about at the very beginning of this episode, if you want to jump in and tell me which characters I should grab with my, what's it called again? Like the little season 1 ticket. I'm pretty sure it's, I had it written down here. Oh yeah, the Grip Faust or Grip Sinclair. Seems like one of those two is a good choice. But for now, I'm going to have a sip of coffee, and we're going to get reading. One moment. Instant. Raskolnikov had a fearful dream. He dreamt he was back in his childhood in the little town of his birth. He was a child about 7 years old, walking into the country with his father on the evening of a holiday. It was a grey and heavy day. The country was exactly as he remembered it. Indeed, he recalled it far more vividly in his dream than he had done in memory. The little town stood on a level flat, as bare as the hand, not even a willow near it. Only in the far distance, a copse lay, a dark blur on the very edge of the horizon. A few paces beyond the last market garden stood a tavern, a big tavern, which had always aroused in him a feeling of aversion, even of fear, when he walked by it with his father. There was always a crowd there, always shouting, laughter and abuse, hideous, hoarse singing and often fighting. Drunken and horrible-looking figures were hanging about the tavern. He used to cling close to his father, trembling all over when he met them. Near the tavern, the road became a dusty track, the dust of which was always black. It was a winding road, and about 100 paces further on, it turned to the right to the graveyard. In the middle of the graveyard stood a stone church with a green cupola, where he used to go to Mass 2 or 3 times a year with his father and mother, when a service was held in memory of his grandmother, who had long been dead, and whom he had never seen. On these occasions they used to take on a white dish tied up in a table napkin a special sort of rice pudding with raisins stuck in it, in the shape of a cross. He loved that church. The old-fashioned, unadorned icons and the old priest with the shaking head. Near his grandmother's grave, which was marked by a stone, was the little grave of his younger brother who had died at 6 months old. He did not remember him at all, but he had been told about his little brother, and whenever he visited the graveyard, he used religiously and reverently to cross himself, and to bow down and kiss the little grave. And now he dreamt that he was walking with his father past the tavern on the way to the graveyard. He was holding his father's hand and looking with dread at the tavern. A peculiar circumstance attracted his attention. There seemed to be some kind of festivity going on. There were crowds of gaily dressed townspeople, peasant women, their husbands and riffraff of all sorts, all singing and all more or less drunk. Near the entrance of the tavern stood a cart, but a strange cart. It was one of those big carts usually drawn by heavy cart horses and laden with casks of wine or other heavy goods. He always liked looking at those great cart horses with their long manes, thick legs, and slow, even pace, drawing along a perfect mountain with no appearance of effort, as though it were easier going with a load than without it. But now, strange to say, in the shafts of such a cart he saw a thin little sorrel beast, one of those peasants' nags which he had often seen straining their utmost under a heavy load of wood or hay, especially when the wheels were stuck in the mud or in a rut. And the peasants would beat them so cruelly, sometimes even about the nose and eyes, and he felt so sorry for them that he almost cried, and his mother always used to take him away from the window. All of a sudden, there was a great uproar of shouting, singing, and the balalaika, and from the tavern a number of big and very drunken peasants came out, wearing red and blue shirts and coats thrown over their shoulders. "Get in!" shouted one of them, a young thick-necked peasant with a fleshy face red as a carrot. "I'll take you all! Get in!" But at once there was an outbreak of laughter and exclamations in the crowd. "Take us all with a beast like that? Why, Mikolka, are you crazy to put a nag like that in such a cart? And this mare is 20 if she is a day, mates! Get in, I'll take you all!" Mikolka shouted again, leaping first into the cart, seizing the reins and standing straight up in front. "The bay has gone with Matvey," he shouted from the cart, "and this brute, mates, is just breaking my heart. I feel as if I could kill her. She's just eating her head off. Get in, I tell you. I'll make her gallop. She'll gallop." And he picked up the whip, preparing himself with relish to flog the little mare. "Get in! Come along!" the crowd laughed. "D'ye hear? She'll gallop!" "Gallop indeed! She has not had a gallop in her for the last 10 years. She'll jog along. Don't you mind her, mates. Bring a whip, each of you. Get ready. All right, give it to her." They all clambered into Mikolka's cart, laughing and making jokes. 6 men got in, and there was still room for more. They hauled in a fat, rosy-cheeked woman. She was dressed in red cotton and a pointed, beaded headdress and thick leather shoes. She was cracking nuts and laughing. The crowd round them was laughing too, and indeed, how could they help laughing? That wretched nag was to drag all the cartload of them at a gallop. 2 young fellows in the cart were just getting whips ready to help Mikolka. With the cry of "Now!" the mare tugged with all her might, but far from galloping, could scarcely move forward. She struggled with her legs, gasping and shrinking from the blows of the 3 whips which were showered upon her like hail. The laughter in the cart and in the crowd was redoubled. But Mikolka flew into a rage and furiously thrashed the mare, as though he supposed she really could gallop. "Let me get in too, mates!" shouted a young man in the crowd, whose appetite was aroused. "Get in! All get in!" cried Mikolka. "She will draw you all! I'll beat her to death!" And he thrashed and thrashed at the mare, beside himself with fury. "Father! Father!" he cried. "Father, what are they doing? Father, they are beating the poor horse!" Come along, said his father. "They are drunken and foolish. They are in fun. Come away, don't look." And he tried to draw him away, but he tore himself away from his hand, and beside himself with horror ran to the horse. The poor beast was in a bad way. She was gasping, standing still, then tugging again and almost falling. "Beat her to death!" cried Mikolka. "It's come to that! I'll do for her!" "What are you about? Are you a Christian, you devil?" shouted an old man in the crowd. "Did anyone ever see the like? A wretched nag like that pulling such a cartload," said another. "You'll kill her," shouted the third. "Don't meddle. It's my property. I'll do what I choose. Get in, more of you! Get in, all of you! I will have her go at a gallop!" All at once, laughter broke into a roar and covered everything. The mare, roused by the shower of blows, began feebly kicking. Even the old man could not help smiling. To think of a wretched little beast like that trying to kick. 2 lads in the crowd snatched up whips and ran to the mare to beat her about the ribs. One ran to each side.
"Hit her in the face! In the eyes! In the eyes!"
cried Mikulka. "Give us a song, mates!" shouted someone in the cart, and everyone in the cart joined in a riotous song, jingling a tambourine and whistling. The woman went on cracking nuts and laughing. He ran beside the mare, ran in front of her, saw her being whipped across the eyes, right in the eyes. He was crying. He felt choking. His tears were streaming. One of the men gave him a cut with the whip across the face. He did not feel it. Wringing his hands and screaming, he rushed up to the grey-headed old man with the grey beard who was shaking his head in disapproval. One woman seized him by the hand and would have taken him away, but he tore himself from her and ran back to the mare. She was almost at the last gasp, but began kicking once more.
"I'll teach you to kick!"
Mikulka shouted ferociously. He threw down the whip, bent forward, and picked up from the bottom of the cart a long, thick shaft. He took hold of one end with both hands and with an effort brandished it over the mare. "He'll crush her!" was shouted round him. "He'll kill her!"
"It's my property!"
shouted Mikulka, and brought the shaft down with a swinging blow. There was a sound of a heavy thud.
"Thrash her!
Thrash her! Why have you stopped?" shouted voices in the crowd. And Mikulka swung the shaft a second time, and it fell a second time on the spine of the luckless mare. She sank back on her haunches, but lurched forward and tugged forward with all her force, tugged first on one side and then on the other, trying to move the cart. But the 6 whips were attacking her in all directions, and the shaft was raised again and fell upon her a third time, then a fourth, with heavy, measured blows. Mikulka was in a fury that he could not kill her at one blow. "She's a tough one," was shouted in the crowd. "She'll fall in minutes, mate. There will soon be an end of her," said an admiring spectator in the crowd. "Fetch an axe to her! Finish her off!" shouted a third.
"I'll show you! Stand off!"
Mikulka screamed frantically. He threw down the shaft, stooped down in the cart, and picked up an iron crowbar.
"Look out!"
he shouted, and with all his might he dealt a stunning blow at the poor mare. The blow fell. The mare staggered, sank back, tried to pull, but the bar fell again with a swinging blow on her back, and she fell on the ground like a log.
"Finish her off!"
shouted Mikulka, and he leapt, beside himself, out of the cart. Several young men, also flushed with drink, seized anything they could come across, whips, sticks, poles, and ran to the dying mare. Mikulka stood on one side and began dealing random blows with the crowbar. The mare stretched out her head, drew a long breath, and died. "You butchered her!" someone shouted in the crowd. "Why wouldn't she gallop then?"
"My property!"
shouted Mikulka, with bloodshot eyes, brandishing the bar in his hands. He stood as though regretting that he had nothing more to beat. "No mistake about it. You are not a Christian," many voices were shouting in the crowd. But the poor boy, beside himself, made his way screaming through the crowd to the sorrel nag, put his arms round her bleeding dead head and kissed it, kissed the eyes and kissed the lips. Then he jumped up and flew in a frenzy with his little fists at Mikulka. At that instant, his father, who had been running after him, snatched him up and carried him out of the crowd. "Come along. Come. Let us go home," he said to him. "Father, why did they kill the poor horse?" he sobbed. But his voice broke, and the words came in shrieks from his panting chest. "They are drunk. They are brutal. It's not our business," said his father. He put his arms round his father, but he felt choked. He tried to draw a breath, to cry out, and woke up. Yeah, it's a hard read. I think it was when I sort of hit that part of the book that you really get sucked into the sort of 19th century realism aspect of it. Because interestingly enough, the book was first proposed and written, I think, or at least in more than draft form as a first-person novel, and this always just makes me twinge in agony, Dostoevsky burnt everything because he realized it wasn't really working apparently in that format and rewrote it in third person. But you were really there kind of following everything. So again, I don't know whether that has made people more or less likely to read the book already if you haven't. It's really good. It's intense. Such a kind of lackluster way to describe it. But yeah, thanks for bearing with me and letting me read that. Let me see now. Back to the structure. Yes. Dream. Oh, one thing I'd also just thought I'll share in this video is at least two interesting things. One, when the sources that I draw on, in addition to, wikis and stuff, and the book itself, an absolutely invaluable source of academic articles, journals, books, etc. is a website called JSTOR. Now, I first encountered this when I was at university a lifetime ago, but even if you don't have an institutional login, you can still, with a Google account or even a Facebook account, I think, access 100 articles a month. It's well worth it if you're ever, if you've ever got the time to kind of read through some academic stuff, and it seems to have a really, really vast library. So JSTOR, highly recommended, JSTOR, check that out. And then just another kind of interesting thing, we won't dwell on this for too long, is this incredible website, which is basically like a sort of, it gives you a bit of a history of the city of St. Petersburg, also an historic map, which you can kind of map over the present-day map. But the best part is it shows you, let's just zoom out a bit here, it shows you places from the novel that you can visit in modern day, because again, Dostoevsky, lived in these places, and so they're all very firmly based on the real architecture and planning of St. Petersburg. You can trace the journeys of all the characters. It's quite incredible. So, what is this called? City as Space, Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. So you should be able to find this pretty easily. Or even, hang on, simplest thing to do would be to put a link in the chat. Cool. Oh, you're very welcome, Bonnie2920. Yeah. And even for non-college students, it's a wonderful resource. Especially because I guess, and I hope I'm not, someone I know is in the process of discussing and dissecting and analysing the Wuthering Heights film that's come out. Of course, I was really tempted, but I'm not contemporary. I work slowly. Of course, given this movie's just come out, it would make a lot of sense to really just get into Heathcliff. But yeah, so I've been recommending JSTOR to everyone I know. And if you want to win in an argument too, it could be something that might come in handy. You can pull out the references, so that's quite good in that sense too. Right. Well, I guess that's kind of everything I wanted to cover. Thank you. I suppose in general I should just say, as I always want to, I can't believe that people have, that people are watching this. It's so rad. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And for watching the videos. It's really, really rewarding. I mean, honestly, the most edifying and educational thing for me is to see what people comment, and the knowledge that everyone has, and the way they articulate it, and the different points of view expressed really, really... It's not that I didn't expect people to have these points of view or be able to express them so cogently and coherently, but it's that people are taking the time to do so, which is really, really... I don't want to say rad again, but we'll just go with rad. It's yeah, it's really, really touching. Anyway, that's probably a little bit glurgy, but so I'm gonna end the stream. Well, I'm not gonna end the stream just yet because I'm gonna try something. And I'm gonna technically, this is like the end of the stream, because if the thing I do next is a complete disaster, or it gets copyright struck, then I can just cut it. So stick around if you'd like, because I'm going to do something after this, but in case this doesn't survive, thank you so much for tuning in. Episode on Rodion in Limbus Company, the deep dive, is coming out this time in a week. Thank you so much for coming, and hope you enjoyed the stream. Now that's the end, and now let's just try this thing. Okay. Because, obviously, as everyone knows, there's a lot of really cool... I should turn this off, yeah. A lot of really awesome music in these games. And so I just wanted to, have a go at something. Chasing shadows through my yesterdays, only memories left to claim. Like a fire that cleanses as it burns, leaving the ash to fall like rain. I will run until I fall, and all the pain I felt I can't recall. Will I miss it all as well? A long, long way from now, when I look back on those memories, I sure hope that I can smile. One day, as Gregor Samsa awoke from his uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous vermin. With whatever time that's left to me, take the moments day by day. Fuel consumed, burning down into the red. Molten wax reflects my fate. Running with no time to breathe in the swirling chaos, never easy. Hope that I can find a way. If a future me could see, if there'll ever be a reprieve, a chance to smile again. Molly, nalakago shipo, pamanude se cholom, yole dal suike. Ibam, todashi chojo gechiman 괜찮아, 다 사라지네. 괜찮아. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a wicked song. I might even try some of the different versions. Alright, everyone. Take care. It's a scary world out there. That's only 50 minutes, but yeah, thanks for sticking with. Alrighty, folks. Have an awesome week. And yeah, check out the new episode when it comes out. Awesome.